Hey everybody, Qroo here. Welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to conjugate regular and irregular verbs into the present subjunctive mood. Now you've heard me talk about the present subjunctive mood a lot. So what I'm going to do today is create a reference video just showing the conjugations, not when to use them. That way, when you see other videos about how and when to use the subjunctive, I can refer you back to this video if you don't know how to do the conjugations. Okay, we're going to start with regular verbs. And when I say regular verbs, that means these are verbs that follow the pattern I'm going to be showing you. And, you know, there's always irregular verbs that just want to follow their own pattern, but we're going to talk about those second. First, regular verbs. Now, it is not that difficult to conjugate into the present subjunctive mood if you know the present indicative, which chances are, if you've been studying Spanish for any length of time, you do, because it tends to be the very first tense and mood taught to students. So let's take a look at the verb poner in the present indicative. Now, in order to make this verb into the subjunctive, we're going to look at the first person. What does it say? Pongo. And then we're going to drop the last letter off of it. So what we've done here is we've created our root for all of the conjugations. So let's do that. We're talking yo, tú, third person singular, nosotros, third person plural, all of them. This is going to be our base now. And then you're just going to put on the appropriate endings. Now, here's how it works. If there's an AR verb, which this one wasn't, then your endings are es, hemos, en. And if it's an ER or IR verb, meaning it ends with those letters, then your endings are going to be a, as, a, amos, an. See, it kind of looks opposite of the present indicative. With the exception of the first person, there's no O there, okay? This is not really difficult. So let's plug in our endings. Ponga, pongas, ponga, pongamos, pongan. That's it. That is the present subjunctive mood. Let's use another verb you're probably going to use a lot, tener, to have. Let's take a look at the first person in the indicative, right? I have, tengo. What are we going to do? Drop our O from the end, and this is going to be our new base for all of our conjugations. And we're going to go ahead and plug in those other endings. Tenga, tengas, tenga, tengamos, tengan. Okay, let's take a little short verb like ver, to see, right? Same thing. What is it in the first person indicative? Veo. We drop the O. That's going to be our base. We're going to add it all the way down. Vea, veas, vea, veamos, vean. Let's look at an AR verb, comprar, to buy. What is it in the first person indicative? I buy, yo compro, right? Or compro. So we know what our base is going to be when we drop the O. And then we're going to go ahead and fill in the letters. Now remember, for AR verbs, it's es, hemos, en. So we get compre, compres, compre, compremos, compren. Let's do one more AR verb, hablar, to speak, right? I speak in the present indicative is what? Yo hablo, we drop our O, we know that's going to be our base. Hable, hables, hable, hablemos, hablen. That's it. That's regular verbs. It's not that difficult. Now, let's move on to irregular verbs. Now, when I say irregular, you're going to have a few irregular verbs that are going to be completely different. And you've seen these in other forms. One of them is going to be ir, to go again. That one's always irregular. You got to expect it. Then there's going to be a few that there's some spelling changes just to maintain the sounds. And there's a few that the nosotros form is going to be different. First, we're going to touch on the big irregulars, the ones that are completely irregular. And these are verbs you're probably going to be using all the time. So these verbs are dar, to give, estar, to be, ser, to be, ir, to go, haber, which means to have, but not like tener. It's a helping verb, like I have had something or I have gone, that kind of thing. And saber, to know. Let's start with dar, to give. We're going to have de, des, de, demos, den. So you have a little accent over the E in the first and third person. Also, I didn't mention this before, but you may have noticed that the first and third person of the present subjunctive mood are going to always be the same. That means that you may have to use some pronouns that you wouldn't normally have to stick in, like yo, to be understood who you're talking about. Let's move on to ser, to be. Sea, seas, sea, seamos, sean. And estar, to be. Esté, estés, esté, estemos, estén. So you still have those accents just like you would in the present indicative. Now, haber, which is a helping verb, like I said, like I have spoken, he hablado, and it's also used with my favorite Spanish word, hay, which means there is, or there are, or is there, or are there. So that's actually when it's going to be most useful. This one conjugates haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayan. Saber, to know. Sepa, sepas, sepa, sepamos, sepan. And last but not least of these truly irregular verbs is ir, to go. This one's irregular a lot of the time, so you should be used to it. This one is vaya, vayas, vaya, vayamos, vayan. The best way to learn those verbs is just to go memorize them. Now we're going to move on to another category that will appear to conjugate in a regular way, except in the nosotros form. And when you know the present indicative, remember that's the present tense you've been using all this time, you just maybe didn't realize there were some other options, it's going to give you an indication how to use this. So one of the categories is stem changing verbs that change from E to IE. Now a big one is querer, to want. This one changes. Querer, to want, is the infinitive. When we make it in the present indicative, it's quiero, quieres, quiere, queremos. See, nosotros didn't change, quieren. Well, this pattern kind of transfers over. So we would do what we normally do. We take quiero, we drop the O, and we're going to put our other endings, right? Quiera, quieras, quiera. But we're back to nosotros. That stem is not going to change. Queramos, quieran. Another category that does this are the verbs that change from O to UE. Two of the big ones are poder, to be able to, and dormir, to sleep. Now the present indicative does the same thing, so we're just doing it in the subjunctive. We're not changing the stem in the nosotros form. So poder would be pueda, puedas, pueda, podamos, puedan. These are some verbs that'll change spelling a little bit, but they do it in order to maintain the intended sound. Let's take a look at one word, sacar, which means to take out. In the first person indicative, it would be saco. So if we were going to add all of our endings, right, because it's an AR, and I put an E there, what would it sound like? Sase or something, because a C before an I or an E has an S sound, so it wouldn't sound anything like saco. So what they do is to maintain the sound is Spanish changes that to a little QU, right, that always has a K sound like quiero. And that becomes our new base. We just add our endings. Saque, saques, saque, saquemos, saquen. Verbs like llegar do the same thing because it's an AR verb. So if we had llego and we drop the O and we put the E, a G before an E or an I sounds like an H in English. So to maintain the sound, they change it to GU to keep that hard G, and the rest is the same. Llegue, llegues, llegue, lleguemos, lleguen. So you may actually have both of these things kind of mixed. The stem changing from like E to IE, so you're not going to do it in the nosotros form, and then you may have a spelling change in the root just to maintain the sound. A good verb for this is empezar, to begin, right? So when we change it out, it's going to be empiece, empieces, empiece, empecemos, empiecen. If you're learning how to conjugate in the present subjunctive for the first time, don't get overwhelmed by it. What I suggest that you learn how to conjugate regular verbs first, then learn those verbs that are very different like ir, ser, estar. They are power verbs. You're going to be using them all the time. Next, I would probably learn the ones with a little bit of a spelling change. And a good way to think of that is it just has to maintain that sound. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to refer to it as many times as you need to. And I look forward to showing you when and how to use the subjunctive to boost your Spanish. That'll be in other videos. So if that sounds like something that might interest you, you might want to subscribe to the channel because I have a lot planned for this in 2022. Until next time, hasta luego.